2 days before our wedding, my fiancé told me he had slept with my twin sister not recently 6 years ago, but he said I had 48 hours to decide if I still wanted to marry him 2 days before our wedding, and suddenly I was the one who had to choose. We were in our kitchen, the one we'd spent months renovating together, and the sunset was streaming through the windows we'd picked out as a couple. He claimed he couldn't enter our marriage with this secret between us. I've carried this guilt for years, Emily, he said, his voice breaking. Olivia and I, we were drunk. It was a mistake, and it never happened again. I felt like I was floating outside my body, watching someone else's life fall apart. My sister, my twin, the person who'd shared a womb with me, who was supposed to be standing beside me at the altar in 2 days. By now, I managed to ask, my mouth dry. Why tell me this 2 days before our wedding? Ryan's eyes, those kind hazel eyes I'd fallen in love with, couldn't meet mine. I saw her yesterday at the final venue walk through, something in the way she looked at me. I realized I couldn't start our marriage with this between us. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was how desperately I wanted to forgive him, to convince myself that 6 years ago didn't matter, that it was before we'd said I love you, before he'd proposed on the cliffside where we'd had our third date. I didn't cry, not then. Instead, I grabbed my keys and drove straight to my sister's apartment. The same sister who'd helped me pick out my wedding dress, who'd organized my bachelorette party, who'd been my maid of honor through all the planning. Olivia opened her door wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt. Her hair, the same shade of auburn as mine, was pulled into a messy bun. For a split second, it was like looking in a mirror, except her eyes were clear while mine were burning with unshed tears. Emily, what's wrong? She asked, concern creasing her forehead. Ryan just told me, I said, pushing past her into the apartment. About you and him 6 years ago. Olivia's face morphed from concern to confusion. What are you talking about? Don't lie to me, I spat out. Not now. Not after everything. My sister's face hardened in a way I recognized from our childhood fights. Ryan's lying. Nothing happened between us 6 years ago. Nothing has ever happened between us. She was either the world's best actress or telling the truth. And the thing about having a twin is that you usually know when they're lying. Olivia wasn't lying, at least not about what she was denying. Why would he make that up? I asked, suddenly unsure of everything. I don't know, Olivia said, taking my trembling hands in hers, but you need to ask yourself why your fiancé's team would tell you something so destructive right before your wedding. That night I checked into a hotel, ignoring Ryan's desperate calls and texts. As I stared at the ceiling, one terrible question kept circling. What if Ryan was lying about when it happened? What if it wasn't 6 years ago at all? Ryan and I met at a charity fundraiser 7 years ago. I was working for the nonprofit hosting the event, and he was there representing his family's investment firm. He'd donated generously and asked me to dinner the same night. We were engaged within a year but agreed to a long engagement while he established himself at his father's company, and I finished my master's degree. Olivia met Ryan that same night. I'd introduced them near the bar, excited for my sister to meet the charming man who'd been making me laugh all evening. I remember Ryan's polite smile, a formal handshake. Nothing seemed off. Olivia and I had always had a complicated relationship. Being identical twins meant people confused us constantly growing up, but our personalities couldn't have been more different. I was careful, methodical, a planner. Olivia took risks, changed plans last minute, and somehow always landed on her feet, and she had a habit of wanting what I had: my prom date in high school, my first choice college, even my dream job interview. She applied for the same position after I told her about it. She never got the job, but the pattern was clear. After Ryan's confession, I started digging. I searched through old messages, photos, anything that might give me answers. That's when I found it, an old text thread I'd forgotten about. I'd gone to visit my parents for the weekend without Ryan. Olivia had canceled her plans to join us at the last minute, claiming a work emergency. The messages were nothing explicit, but there was a photo Ryan had sent me that weekend. He'd claimed to be at a business dinner, but the background didn't look like any restaurant. It looked like someone's apartment. There was an edge of a painting visible, a distinctive abstract piece I recognized from Olivia's old place. I felt sick, but the timeline didn't match what Ryan had confessed. He'd said 6 years ago, just after we started dating. This was well into our relationship, after we'd already moved in together. But more importantly, it contradicted both their stories. Ryan claimed it was once 6 years ago. Olivia denied anything ever happened. Someone was lying, maybe both of them. I called my best friend Tashist, who'd known both me and Olivia since childhood. I needed perspective from someone who knew all the players in this terrible drama. I think here is more to this story, I told her after explaining Ryan's confession and Olivia's denial. I found something from 5 years ago that doesn't make sense. Tuesta said, her voice cautious. Are you sure you want to keep digging? The wedding is in 2 days. I need to know the truth before I walk down that aisle, I insisted. What would you do? There was a long pause before Tontas answered. I'd want to know everything, but I'd also think about what I was going to do with that information. That was the question, wasn't it? What would I do if I discovered the worst? Call off the wedding. Neared them both. Neither option felt right, Mom called while I was still in the hotel room, frantic after hearing from Ryan that we'd had a fight. Whatever happened, you can work through it, she insisted. Every couple has problems before the wedding. It's just nerves. I almost told her everything, but stopped myself. Mom had always favored Olivia, making excuses for her behavior, no matter how many times she'd hurt me. Instead, I just promised to be at the final dress fitting in the morning. I am sure whatever happened isn't as bad as it seems, Mom said before hanging up. Don't throw away your future over one mistake. If only she knew. The next morning, I found myself in the bridal salon, standing on a small platform surrounded by mirrors while the seamstress made final adjustments to my dress. Mom sat on a velvet chair, dabbing at tears with a tissue. Olivia stood in the corner, unusually quiet in her maid of honor dress. It's perfect, Mom, said her voice thick with emotion. You look like a princess, Emily. I stared at my reflection, trying to reconcile the image with how I felt inside. The woman in the mirror looked serene, beautiful even, with delicate lace cascading down her arms. In plight, I was a hurricane of doubt and suspicion. Maybe we should postpone, I said suddenly, watching Mom's face fall in the mirror. Postpone? Why would you even suggest that? Mom's voice rose with alarm. Everything is paid for. Guests are arriving from out of town. You can't be serious. Olivia caught my eye in the mirror. If you are not ready, you shouldn't go through with it. The sudden support from my sister only deepened my suspicion. When had Olivia ever advised caution? She was the one who jumped off the high dive at age 8, who'd gone skydiving on her 21st birthday, who believed in leaping first and looking second. Since when do you advocate thinking things through? I asked, turning to face her directly. Olivia shrugged, a too casual gesture. Marriage is different. It's forever. The seamstress, clearly uncomfortable with the tension, mumbled something about getting more pins and scurried away. Mom looked between us, confusion evident on her face. What's going on with you two, and what happened with Ryan? He called me last night, sounding sounding devastated. I stepped down from the platform, careful not to step on the dress's hem. Ryan confessed to sleeping with Olivia 6 years ago. The salon seemed to freeze. Mom's hand flew to her throat, her eyes darting to Olivia, who had gone pale. That's not true, Olivia said quickly. I told Emily that last night. Ryan's lying. Mun exhaled with relief. Well, there you have it, just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. My fiancé claims he slept with my twin sister, and it's just a misunderstanding. I wanted to scream. Why would Ryan lie about something like that? I asked instead. What possible reason could he have? Mom waved her hand dismissively. Who knows why men say the things they do? Cold feet, maybe. The important thing is to move forward. These problems have a way of working themselves out. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and wondered if she'd ever faced a real problem in her marriage, or if she'd just swept them under the rug for 40 years. That afternoon, Dad picked me up from the salon to take me to lunch. A tradition we'd started when I was in high school. Every major event, we'd have a private lunch together the day before. As we sat in his favorite steakhouse, I noticed something I'd never seen before, a nervousness in my father's usually confident demeanor. He kept checking his phone, his fingers drumming on the table. Dad, do you think I should marry Ryan? I asked directly. Dad nearly choked on his water. That's a question only you can answer, pumpkin. But what's your opinion? You've always given me advice. Dad stared at his plate. Marriage is complicated sometimes. Sometimes people make mistakes, but a good marriage can survive those mistakes if both people are committed. It wasn't the answer I expected from my father, who'd always been my moral compass. It sounded like he was giving me permission to overlook betrayal. Ryan told me he slept with Olivia years ago, I said, watching his reaction carefully. Dad's face remained impressively neutral, but his knuckles whitened around his fork. Did he? And what did your sister say? She denied it, said it never happened. Dad nodded slowly. Well then what? I pressed. Then you have to decide who you trust more, he said simply, as he drove me back to the hotel. Dad said something that would echo in my mind later. Emily, whatever you decide about the wedding, your mother and I will support you. But remember that some truths don't set you free. They just hurt everyone involved. That night, Ryan texted again. Asterisk, I am giving you space, but please know that I told you because I couldn't live with the lie anymore. I love you. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. Asterisk, I texted back a single question. Was it really 6 years ago? Asterisk, his response came quickly. And yes, before we were serious, I swear. Asterisk, I stared at his message, thinking about the photo from 5 years ago, thinking about my father's strange behavior at lunch, thinking about Olivia's uncharacteristic caution. Something wasn't adding up. I called Tages and asked her to meet me for coffee in the morning. If anyone knew the whole truth, it would be my oldest friend. Mia was already waiting when I arrived at the coffee shop, 2 steaming mugs on the table. Her face was drawn like she hadn't slept much. You look terrible, I said, sliding into the chair across from her. Look who's talking, she replied with a weak smile. Bride to be shouldn't have bags under her eyes the day before her wedding. I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, gathering courage. Maya, I need you to be completely honest with me, even if it hurts. Did something happen between Ryan and Olivia not 6 years ago, but more recently? Maya's face crumpled. Am I? Just tell me, I interrupted. I am already assuming the worst. She took a deep breath. I saw them together 3 months ago, at the Westridge Hotel downtown. They didn't see me. I was there for a work conference, coming out of the elevator as they were going in. She paused. They were holding hands, It wasn't like a friendly thing. The coffee turned to acid in my stomach. 3 months ago, I repeated, when I was in Chicago for that work project. Maya nodded miserably. I should have told you right away. But then I convinced myself I might have misinterpreted what I saw, and Olivia swore to me it was innocent when I confronted her. You confronted her? I asked, surprised. Of course I did. She's your sister, but you are my best friend. She fed me some story about helping Ryan plan a surprise for your anniversary. Deserter's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to believe her. I am so sorry, Emily. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. It's not your fault. What are you going to do about the wedding? She asked. I stared out the window at the people rushing by, living their normal lives while mine was imploding. I don't know yet, but I am going to the rehearsal dinner tonight. After everything you've learned, Tazins looked shocked. I need to see them together. I need to see how they act around each other now that everything's out in the open. I took a deep breath, and I need to talk to my dad again. I think he knows something. The rehearsal dinner was at an upscale restaurant overlooking the city. I arrived deliberately late, wanting to observe everyone before they noticed me. Through the window, I could see Ryan at the head table, checking his watch nervously. Olivia was seated as far from him as possible, engaged in animated conversation with one of the bridesmaids. My parents sat together, though there seemed to be a foot of cold space between them when I entered. Ryan rushed to my side, relief evident on his face. You came, he whispered, reaching for my hand. I let him take it, watching his face for any sign of deception. I haven't decided anything yet, I said quietly. The dinner was excruciating, exhibition trying to maintain the facade of a happy pre-wedding celebration, while tension crackled just beneath the surface. I noticed my father refilling his scotch glass repeatedly, something he rarely did. I caught Olivia watching Ryan when she thought no one was looking, not with anger or embarrassment, but with something that looked disturbingly like longing. After the main course, my father stood up to give his traditional toast. His words were perfect, emotionally resonant, talking about watching me grow up and how proud he was of the woman I'd become. But his eyes never quite met mine. When the dinner finally ended, I pulled my father aside while everyone was saying goodbyes. Dad, I need to talk to you, I said firmly. Alone. He looked startled, then resigned. Not here, he said, glancing around. Meet me at my office in an hour. Dad's law office was dark when I arrived, just a single light burning in his corner office. He was standing by the window, another scotch in hand. How long have you known? I asked without preamble. Dad didn't pretend not to understand. About Ryan and Olivia, a while? How long is a while, Dad? I pressed. He sighed heavily, finally turning to face me. I caught them together last year at the lake house during the family weekend when you were sick and couldn't make it. The betrayal felt like a physical blow. A year, you've known for a year and said nothing. What good would it have done? Dad asked, his voice breaking. They would have destroyed you, destroyed our family. So you let me plan an entire wedding to a man who's been cheating on me with my sister. I couldn't keep the disgust from my voice. I confronted them both, Dad said defensively. Ryan swore it was over, that it had been a terrible mistake. He promised to be faithful to you going forward. I wanted to believe him, and Olivia, what was her excuse? Dad looked away. Olivia has always been complicated. You know that. She said she was in love with him. The room seemed to spin around me. In love with him, I repeated numbly. I made them both promise it was over. Dad continued. I hoped that would be the end of it. But it wasn't, I said, thinking of what Tazich had told me. They've been seeing each other this whole time, haven't they? Dad didn't answer, which was answer enough. enough. Why did Ryan confess now? About something that supposedly happened 6 years ago when the real betrayal has been ongoing, I demanded. Dad ran a hand through his thinning hair. I don't know. Maybe his conscience finally got to him, but he couldn't bear to tell the whole truth. Or maybe I thought it was something else entirely, a strategic confession, a partial truth designed to make me either forgive everything or be the one to call off the wedding. What are you going to do? Dad asked, fear evident in his voice. I stood up suddenly certain. I am going to get married tomorrow, Dad. His relief was palpable. You are forgiving him. I looked at my father, this man I'd admired my whole life, who'd chosen silence over truth. No, I said quietly. I am not forgiving anyone. I left my father's office with a plan forming first. I needed proof, not just secondhand accounts or suspicions, but undeniable evidence. Then I needed to understand exactly what game Ryan was playing with his strategic confession. I drove to Ryan's apartment, our apartment knowing he'd be out with his groomsmen for his bachelor party. On using my key, I let myself in and began a methodical search. I started with his home office, the one place he'd always kept meticulously organized and private in the back of his desk drawer. Hidden beneath tax documents, I found a small velvet box. My heart seized another ring, but inside was a pair of diamond earrings I'd never seen with a small card. For oh, always, I took a photo with my phone, my hands shaking. Next, I checked his laptop. Ryan kept it password protected, but I knew all his passwords, or thought I did. The usual ones didn't work. After several failed attempts, I tried something on a hunch. Olivia's birthday. The screen unlocked immediately. What I found devastated me. A mail's hundreds of them, between Ryan and Olivia going back years, not just recent months, but almost the entirety of our relationship. I forwarded the most incriminating ones to myself, then checked his photos. There they were, pictures of them together in places I'd never been. Weekends when Ryan claimed to be on business trips, moments stolen during family gatherings. The photos showed a clear progression from secret fling to something much deeper. The final piece clicked when I found a draft email to his attorney, dated just 3 days ago. I'd as discussed, I need to protect my assets in case Emily discovers the full extent of the situation with her sister. The friend we signed doesn't cover infidelity on my part. Is there any way to ensure I am protected if this comes to light after the wedding? Isaiah, if Emily chooses to call off the wedding, am I financially liable for any of the costs since technically I didn't cancel it? Asterisk. It all made horrible sense now. Ryan's confession was calculated. By admitting to a one-time indiscretion years ago, he was trying to manipulate me into either forgiving him before discovering the full truth or being the one to call off the wedding, potentially saving himself financially. I forwarded the draft to myself, then carefully returned everything to its place before leaving. I took one last look around the apartment we'd shared at the life we'd built on lies. My phone buzzed, a text from Olivia, and can we talk? Just us, please. Asterisk. I agreed to meet her at a park near her apartment. The night air was cool as I sat on a bench waiting. When Olivia arrived, she looked different somehow, smaller. I am getting married tomorrow, I said as she sat beside me. I know, she replied softly. That's why we need to talk. No, I cut her off. I am going to talk and you are going to listen. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos I'd taken of the earrings, the emails, the draft to the attorney. Not just the bits and pieces. People have been willing to tell me everything. Her face crumpled. Emily, how long? I demanded. How long have you been sleeping with my fiancé? Tears spilled down her cheeks. 5 years, she whispered, on and off at first, then more seriously for the past 2 years. I'm in love with him, Em. A casual admission cut deeper than I expected. You are in love with him, I repeated. My fiancé, the man I've been building a life with. It just happened, she said, as if that explained everything. We tried to fight it, I swear we did. By meeting in hotel rooms, by exchanging love notes and gifts, by lying to my face for years. My voice rose with each question. That's not fighting it, Olivia. That's giving into it completely while keeping me in the dark. Ryan wanted to tell you so many times, Olivia insisted, but we were afraid of hurting you. How considerate of you both. And I suppose his confession 2 days before the wedding was his attempt to minimize the hurt. Olivia looked confused. What confession? He told me he slept with you once, 6 years ago. A one-night stand when we'd just started dating. I studied her face. He didn't tell you about that? She shook her head slowly. Number, we haven't spoken since Dad caught us last year. He made us promise to end it. Another lie, you haven't spoken. Then what about the Westridge Hotel 3 months ago? What about these emails from last week? Olivia's eyes widened. For the first time, I saw genuine shock on her face. I don't know what you are talking about. I haven't seen Ryan in months. I pulled up one of the emails on my phone and showed her. The blood drained from her face as she read it. This isn't me, she whispered, scrolling frantically. Emily, this isn't me. Look at the email address. It's not mine. It's oliviawinters@gmail.com. My email is oliviawinters@gmail.com. I grabbed the phone back, checking the address. She was right. The email was similar but not identical to hers. I opened the photos again, looking more carefully. In several of them, Olivia's face was partially obscured or at an angle that made identification difficult. He created a fake email account, I said slowly, the pieces falling into place. And these photos, they could be someone else common who looks like you from certain angles. He's been pretending to be with me. Olivia looked horrified. But why? To have an excuse, I realized. An explanation for his absences, his distraction. He's been seeing someone else, maybe multiple people, and using you as the cover story. Olivia grabbed my hands. Emily, I did sleep with Ryan. That part is true. It started 5 years ago and it was on and off for a while, but I ended it for good last year after Dad found out. I swear to you. As angry as I was, I could see the truth in her eyes. Does he know you ended it for good? She nodded. I told him it was over, that I couldn't keep hurting you. He didn't take it well. So he created this elaborate fiction, I said, thinking aloud. A fake affair with you that continued while he was actually with someone else. Then a strategic confession about a one-time mistake years ago, hoping I'd either forgive him or call off the wedding myself. What are you going to do? Olivia asked. I stood up suddenly energized by clarity. I am going to need your help. Morning dawned clear and bright, perfect weather for a wedding. I'd spent the night with Tazage, finalizing plans and making calls. Now, as my mother helped me into my wedding dress, I felt strangely calm. You look radiant, Mom said, adjusting my veil. I knew you'd work things out with Ryan. I met her eyes in the mirror. Mom, part here is something you should know before we leave for the church. Her hands stilled on my shoulders. What is it, sweetheart? Ryan has been unfaithful throughout our relationship, I said quietly, not just with Olivia years ago, but with other women. Mom's face froze, then crumpled. Oh, Emily, I have proof, I continued. Emails, photos, everything. But the wedding, she said weakly. Everyone is waiting. The wedding is still happening, I assured her. Just not quite how everyone expects. Understanding dawned in her eyes. Emily, what are you planning, Justice? I said simply. And I need to know if you are with me. Mom straightened her shoulders. shoulders, a resolve I'd rarely seen settling over her features. I am with you. At the church, guests filled the pews. Ryan waited at the altar, handsome in his tuxedo, the picture of an eager groom. His parents sat in the front row, beaming with pride. My father looked nervous as he prepared to walk me down the aisle. Are you sure about this? Dad whispered as we stood at the back of the church arm in arm. More sure than I've ever been about anything, I replied. Are you with me, Dad? He hesitated, then nodded. I am sorry I failed you. You can make it right now, I said, squeezing his arm. The music swelled, and we began our walk down the aisle. Ryan's face lit up when he saw me, a smile that once would have made my heart race. Now I saw it for what it was, a performance. When we reached the altar, Dad placed my hand in Ryan's, then stepped back. The minister began the ceremony, his voice solemn as he spoke of love and trust and commitment. If anyone knows why these two should not be joined in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace, the minister intoned. Actually, I have something to say. A murmur rippled through the guests. Ryan's hand tightened on mine. Emily, he whispered urgently. What are you doing? I gently extricated my hand from his. I'm telling the truth, Ryan. Something you should have tried. Turning back to our guests, I took a deep breath. I discovered this week that Ryan has been unfaithful throughout our relationship, not just once, as he confessed to me 2 days ago, but consistently with multiple partners. Gasps and whispers erupted. Ryan's confession was calculated an attempt to either secure my forgiveness for a lesser crime than he actually committed, or to make me call off the wedding myself. Emily, stop, Ryan hissed, his face reddening. You are embarrassing yourself. No, Ryan, I am finally standing up for myself. You didn't just betray me with your infidelity. You tried to use my sister as a scapegoat, damaging my relationship with her. You involved my father in your lies. You manipulated everyone in this room who cares about us. From the front row, Olivia stood up. It's true, she said, her voice carrying clearly. Ryan and I were involved years ago, but I ended it after Dad confronted us. Ryan continued to use my name as a cover for his other affairs. Ryan's face contorted with anger. This is insane. You are both lying. That's when Tyba stood up from her seat as bridesmaid. I have the emails and photos, Ryan. The fake email account you created, the draft to your attorney about protecting your assets. It's all been sent to everyone in this room. I'm Q. Phones began buzzing throughout the church as the evidence I compiled was delivered to every guest. Ryan lunged toward me, but my father stepped between us. Don't, Dad, warned his voice low and dangerous. I face our guests again. I am sorry you all came here expecting a wedding. What you are witnessing instead is an ending, and for me, a beginning. I removed my engagement ring and placed it on the altar. I won't be marrying Ryan today or ever, but I wanted to face him publicly to speak my truth in front of everyone who matters to me, rather than disappearing quietly and letting him control the narrative. Ryan's best man. James stepped forward, then removing his Bhutani Morio and dropping it on the ground. I can't stand up for you anymore, man, he said to Ryan, not after seeing this evidence. One by one, the groomsmen followed suit. Ryan stood alone at the altar, abandoned by even his closest friends. I turned to leave, my head held high when Ryan called after me. You regret this, Emily. You are nothing without me. I paused, looking back at him over my shoulder. No, Ryan, I was nothing with you. Now I am finally free, with my sister on one side and Tejas on the other. I walked back down the aisle past the shocked faces of our guests into the bright sunshine outside the church. The reception venue looked beautiful, flowers everywhere, tables set with fine china, a dance floor polished to a high shine, all of it paid for by my parents, who insisted we use the space despite the cancelled ceremony. No sense letting good champagne go to waste, Dad had said with a wry smile. So instead of a wedding reception, it became a different kind of celebration. Most of the guests had followed us from the church, eager to offer support or simply witness the dramatic conclusion of the day. Ryan and his parents were notably absent. I changed out of my wedding dress into a simple white sundress I'd packed for the honeymoon. It felt symbolic, somehow still white. Still me, just not bound by traditional expectations anymore. Are you okay? Olivia asked, bringing me a glass of champagne. Really okay? I considered the question seriously. I am relieved and sad and angry, but mostly relieved. I am so sorry, Em, she said, her eyes filling with tears. For everything, for my part in hurting you, for not telling you the full truth sooner. I took her hand. We both have a lot to work through, but we're sisters first. We'll find our way back to each other. Across the room, Ta6 was explaining to a group of my college friends what had happened, showing them evidence on her phone. My mother was speaking with Ryan's aunt, who had chosen to stay despite her nephew's disgrace. Dad approached with a plate of hors d'oeuvre. Thought you might be hungry, he said, placing it on the table between Olivia and me. Neither of you has eaten all day. As we sat together, a sense of calm washed over me. The weight I'd been carrying for days, maybe years, had finally lifted. In the midst of chaos and hurt, I'd found clarity. I have another confession, Dad said, settling into a chair beside us. I've been afraid of confrontation my whole life. It's why I didn't tell you everything when I should have. He looked between Olivia and me. I was so scared of losing either of you that I ended up betraying you both. We all made mistakes, I said, surprising myself with the gentleness in my voice. But we're going to be okay, all of us. My phone buzzed, another message from Ryan. I'd been getting them all afternoon, cycling between rage, pleading, and attempts at manipulation. I silenced it without reading this one. He won't give up easily, Tazest warned, joining our small circle. Men like Ryan don't know how to lose. I am not worried, I said honestly. He doesn't have power over me anymore. As the afternoon wore on, the mood shifted from shocked support to genuine celebration. Sheben put on music. A spontaneous dance circle formed. True real laughter echoed through the room. James, Ryan's former best man, approached me hesitantly as I stood by the window watching the sunset. I had no idea, he said simply, about any of it. I know, I replied. Neither did I. He shifted awkwardly. For what it's worth, I think you are incredibly brave. The way you handled everything today. Thank you, I said, meaning it. James had always